I'll just quickly say I'm Shannon from CallMiner. For those who don't know CallMiner, we are the industry's only intelligent CX automation platform. And I will turn it over to start with Susan and let everybody here on our panel give a quick intro before we jump into the questions.
Hi, everyone. My name is Susan Duarte. I'm a partner at Womble, Dickinson. I'm based in the DC area. My practice is anything that touches a product. I spent most of my career in-house supporting great folks like yourselves, the customer service and sales and marketing. So I do a lot of AI counseling, privacy, cybersecurity, and vendor issues.
Susan, Rakeb.
Hi, everyone. Rakeb Araya. I'm with General Mills. I've been with General Mills 22 years. I started as an agent, actually, 22 years ago, and then evolved to many different roles. Current role is operations manager for North America retail, food service, and our Latin America and Caribbean regions. And prior to this, I led our systems and technology team. So I have a little bit of insight on our AI governance and things like that. So thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming. All right, Bob, to you.
Hi, Bob Weis. I am the head of global customer service and sales support for Wiley. Wiley is a large publishing company. If you haven't heard the brand, we are one of the world's largest publishers of professional journals, medical journals, architectural journals, engineering journals. We also do a lot of college textbooks, and a brand you may know is if you've read a Dummies book, that's a Wiley brand. So we span the gamut as far as publishing goes.
Thanks so much. All right, we're going to get right into it. I'm going to start, again, just having this really great discussion as we were talking and prepping for this. We're going to start with Susan and ask really, what legal and compliance risks are companies underestimating when they're deploying AI in customer interactions? Is Susan on mute?
Sorry.
Okay.
Nobody wants to hear it from the lawyer anyway, right? Anyway, you missed all the most important things I said. But anyway, what I was saying is I think there's really three buckets as I was thinking about this question. I think the regulatory landscape as it stands right now is being underestimated. There's really no single law in the United States at the moment. Instead, we've got two systems that are developing at the same time. At the federal level, you've got really pro-innovation, relatively light touch, but the states are not at that level. Regulation is expanding rapidly. They're enforcing, and they're really looking for companies, especially larger ones, to be in compliance. So I think this creates a lot of uncertainty for companies about what disclosure should I use and those sorts of things. So I think that's one of the biggest issues that my clients are facing right now. But just quickly on that point, I think it's really important just to think about it through the lens of your customer. So, and I know other panelists will touch on this, so I won't, but just even if there's not certainty in the law, there's always going to be certainty in competition and the market and making sure you're really taking care of your customers. So a lot of these issues are practical and they go hand in hand with the law. So making sure you're covering people's data and protecting it in the right way, or you're telling them the right information. Just things that you would want are often tracked in these consumer protection laws. Another big topic is vendor risk. So I think a lot of companies these days are thinking about the AI tools themselves, and they're licensing chatbots and transcript platforms and summarization tools. But I don't think that some organizations, and not, speak for anyone here, but just are not really thinking about what they're getting with the tools. So what's underlying like what's training the model, how the customer conversation may be used to further improve the model, who has access to the recordings and transcripts, how long is data being retained. There's some biometric issues that are coming up. And so I think it's really important that it's very clear in the contract and also in audits to make sure that they're using the information appropriately and how you wanted them to use it. And then I think, just as I touched upon earlier, is really just privacy, consumer protection, and consumer trust. We're seeing more and more cases where folks are upset because they didn't know that there was an AI transcription happening. They gave their credit card number, or they said something about medical issues, and they were just taken aback when they found out that there was AI there. And so we've seen cases about that, and it's coming down to invasion of privacy or wiretapping issues. But I really just think it's that fundamental, I wish I had known in advance. So the biggest thing I'm telling clients, and I know it adds to the time, is just to be clear and upfront that you're using AI to help you with the call and that it's present. At least they have that knowledge and awareness and can act accordingly. And that's about it. I just limited it to 3.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. And I think it lends really nicely into, obviously I could at some point talk to it from the CallMiner perspective, right? As you're saying, we have come to be, I don't know that it's scrutinized, but always ask for these AI governance type of questions, right? Your security types of certifications and things that we have, right? Fortunately, being in the business for as long as we have, 23, 24 years, those are all things that we take very seriously, right? Because we've been having our hands sort of, moving that type of data of conversations with people for many years. So certainly those are the types of things that we can pride ourselves on for sure. But agree with you when talking to others that are out there in the market. Sadly, some not even knowing, unless they've got someone like yourself that's advising them really well, not even knowing the right questions or types of things to ask or look for, and just sort of assuming, right, that, oh, sure, if this company's in business, obviously they probably have all of those things sort of taken care of. Yeah, appreciate that perspective. So, Rakeb, along the lines of similar, but from your perspective, what are some of the internal governance structures or approval processes that your organization has put in place around AI, and how are those working out for you?
So internally, first and foremost, we go through our AI task force. So if we're looking at an AI solution, they have to vet it. So everything is sent to them. And they have a lot of check lists that they need to go through. Like you mentioned, we do ask of any providers all of their security things, certifications, their own internal governance in terms of like, what do they do with our data, the models that they're using, is it open or closed, etc. And once they vet it and go through that, then they loop in other functions, whether it be cybersecurity to go through that security check, or and then legal. So there's a lot of steps and a lot of checkpoints to make sure that we are protecting consumer data and company data as well. It works out pretty well. I mean, it's very seamless. You submit a form saying, hey, this is the solution that we're looking at, and why is also an important reason. It's not just to use it, but why we're leveraging it. And then they go through their process. And sometimes even with consumer care or with our vendor, they'll like to meet with them and ask specific questions that documents may not be able to address.
Yeah, sure. Bob, do you want to share a little bit, maybe from your perspective in your company, to the same? How you guys?
Yeah, I think. Thanks. I think protecting the customer and protecting the customer experience really go hand in hand, and you can't really separate the two. We're a Salesforce shop, so the things we do leverage the Salesforce trust layer, which really protects customer data privacy and things like that in a way that our internal AI task force, we have the same thing, is comfortable with. So we go through all the same approval processes through our legal and technology teams to ensure anything we deploy meets certain standards which protect that customer privacy. And for us, we want to protect the customer experience. So we go a little bit beyond that. But before I start, I want everyone to know we were Salesforce's first customer to go live with a customer-facing generative AI chatbot in 2023. So we now have 11 bots live and in production. 2 are email and 9 are chatbots. And I'm saying this to give you some perspective. We've learned the hard way, making mistakes and doing things. We now handle, I think in Q1, we handled more than 50,000 cases through our AI, generative AI chatbots and email bots. I think the mistakes that we made in the beginning and the mistakes that people made is if you think about a virtual agent, you need to measure a virtual agent very, very similar to a human agent because you're protecting the customer experience with a balanced scorecard. Most people just look at deflection rates and nothing else. We actually have a customer satisfaction metric for the virtual agents. So each virtual agent gets QA, they get customer satisfaction. We generate knowledge that bot uses, and all the responses are grounded in that knowledge. So the bot is not allowed to look for knowledge anyplace else but what we've provided it. And that makes more relevant answers for the customer. We also set very strict support boundaries for each bot. And it's things that are inclusive in our knowledge base. So what we say is the bot gives up easy. So if we want to protect the customer experience, we want the bot to give up easy and get to a live agent when it's outside of its support boundaries. So we've designed the bot specifically not to maximize deflection rates, but to maximize the things that they can give quality answers on and get the rest to a live agent. There's also certain types of questions. For us, it's sales-related questions that we want that interpersonal relationship, and we get that to a live agent regardless of whether the bot is capable of handling it. So I think we've kind of crafted a workflow where the bot is useful in these cases and provides a very excellent customer experience. We're comfortable with that. The rest, we want to get them to a human agent. And when it's a higher level question, we get that to a human agent. But it really is the discipline of creating a balanced scorecard that works for that agent. And it's not the same thing that you measure a human agent with. It's a little bit different. And I'll give one anecdotal thing, then I'll turn it back over to you. Some of the things we've learned in doing QA for bots is they continue to learn, like a human agent continues to learn, except differently. So some of the funny things that we've had is in our initial stages, one of the bots we had going started communicating with the customer in emojis. We're a publishing company. We don't allow emojis. But the bot learned them from a customer and started using them. The other thing we did is we set support boundaries on what languages we wanted to communicate with. So the bot knew this, except when a customer came in Yugoslavian and asked if we support that language, the bot responded in Yugoslavian saying, no, we don't support the Yugoslavian, instead of responding in English. So we got a negative customer survey. So we had to change our prompts and put some guardrails around the bot on how it can interact with a customer, because it does things you wouldn't have expected when you're used to dealing with a human agent. So it's different, but it's the same discipline approach in a balanced scorecard.
That's amazing. I love that story. And what I find, I love that you guys, in my opinion, are doing it right, because you do need to score both, right? And they're going to score differently, but that's the only way you're truly going to be able to measure what is that customer experience on each level at any sort of data point touch. Not a lot of people are doing that. So again, I applaud you all for doing it. A lot of people just say, oh, it's there. To your point, we're worried about the containment rate. That's great. So they're not really
Yeah,
investing, truly, looking at that.
one of the small metrics we measure, which we're probably the most proud of, is when the bot escalates to an agent, that customer satisfaction score ends up with the agent. So the scores when the bot escalates to the agent are almost exactly the same as when the chat goes directly to an agent. And that's critical for us because we don't want the customer going to the human agent frustrated.
Absolutely.
So that's one of the things we designed into the workflow.
Amazing. I love that. Thanks for sharing.
Hey, Bob, we do have one question from Calvin. I think the question's for you, Bob. Question and request. He wants to know if he can see the scorecard.
Well, some of that's proprietary, but yeah, it's essentially the main metrics for the bot are deflection rates, and then we have some other metrics, like I said, when the bot goes to a human agent, and then customer satisfaction. So, and then there's a QA metric. So those are the three main ones that we measure the bot with. There also is a cost metric. So we're burning tokens or whatever you want to call them, AI usage cost when the bot runs. So we track the cost. So one of the things to note is we actually changed the configuration of a bot that processes refunds at this point, because the first configuration, it actually was cheaper to do it with a human agent. So we redid the configuration. Now it's about half the cost of a human agent. So there is a cost to running AI. It's not free. So you have to measure the cost as well. So it's cost, quality, and deflection rates. So those are the base. I hope that's enough for you. But we max out globally. We're running around 55% deflection. And that's going to entirely change depending on the business and the support boundaries you want for the bot. So we don't want the bot to be higher than that because that lives within the support boundaries that are acceptable to us.
Thanks for the question too. Alvin.
Yeah. Don't make them easy. That was
So Rakeb, keeping within the same lines there, obviously, I'll say to the audience, as Abe was saying, this is a, continuation of multiple conversations that we've had. And when we started our initial webinar and the first conversation, it was, where is everybody on their AI journey, right? We've got people who are still very much, like, oh, I don't know. We're not sure where we want to go with it. We're a little bit fearful of it. We don't really know how to do it. I would say, Bob, you guys are like trailblazers. It seems, like you've been in it for a while and you're really learning from it, which is wonderful. Everything that you've got deployed. Rakeb, would you say you guys are sort of maybe in between that? I feel like you are, but I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, in between that. We haven't deployed anything consumer facing just yet. Again,
Right.
we're a bit risk adverse, so just kind of going through all that process. But we're continuously looking at like where we can, where it's going to make sense, where it's going to have meaningful impact with consumers. Again, with CPG, as you know, is not as, you don't get the same repetitive, same type of questions over and over again. So it varies a ton. So there's a lot more to think through before deploying.
Tell me, like, what concerns do you have most about AI then in customer service today, would you say?
Well, concerns for the organization, or even just me personally, when I'm thinking about AI use cases, is like Bob mentioned, sometimes we're just focusing on the cost reduction and the case deflection, and not necessarily the consumer or the customer experience. And oftentimes we ask the question like start with the customer problem rather than the technology. Whereas a lot of us, I mean, most organizations are always thinking like, okay, let's deploy the technology first and then solve for the customer problem. And I think it needs to be the reverse.
Yeah, I agree with that. We actually deployed, we have a lot of agent augmentation tools that I didn't talk about, which we call them agent augmentation, but they're just things to help the agent. We open and close the case for the agent. So generative AI codes the case and closes the case for the agent to save them that time. And there's things like that. But we started our knowledge base, started as agent recommendations. When we felt it was good enough, then we tried a chatbot.
Yeah.
So we kind of built up to it cautiously because we were really worried about giving the customer the wrong answers. So, and then through one of the things you have to do through QA is manage the hallucinations. So we you have to have QA and customer satisfaction. Otherwise, you don't know when these things are happening. But yeah, we built up to a live customer-facing solution by testing it with our own agents, human agents.
Shannon, we have another question for Bob. Pedro is asking, was Bob talking about QA metrics for chatbot or virtual agents?
They're kind of one and the same in my mind. So a chatbot is a virtual agent. So yeah, it's for the bots. Mostly we have QA. Anything customer facing has QA and customer satisfaction.
Okay. Thanks, Bob. One more question from Ellen. If your chat agent is handling refunds, how can you be sure you don't have a bot speaking to another bot looking for refunds? Wow, good question.
So there's a group for the bot that maintains the business rules. So if a bot comes in and does it, it's got to be a customer that meets the business rules. So it goes through and checks all the criteria. So it does the same thing a human agent would do. So we do the same thing if we reset a password for a customer. In fact, we found in things like the password reset, the virtual agent or the chatbot is more consistent than the human agent, believe it or not, in some degree. So I think if you have the proper business rules in place which govern when you give something and when you don't, then you can apply them through a virtual agent or a chatbot, email bot, and it works. If you don't have those workflows and the business rules documented well, then it doesn't work. So that's it's a lot of this, and we wrote a white paper on generating knowledge for generative AI. It heavily leverages the knowledge that you have in place. Otherwise, it doesn't work well. So I would encourage that. But yeah, you can, if you have a bot talking to a bot, you can get a lot of trouble. We do have human oversight in everything that's order to cash. So in anything that's order to cash, in this case, the credits, the virtual agent or the bot does all the work, and then a human has to push the button. So there's human oversight. We're not yet at the point where we're going to let it go run free.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always going to be QA. There's always going to be human oversight, in my mind. And even if, like our support bots that are, really autonomous, they're still governed by human beings that are monitoring the customer satisfaction and doing QA. So, people were asking us if you could have a bot QA the chatbot. Yes, you can, but I'm not comfortable unless there's somebody reviewing that. That's a human, so a human QA person. So I hope that answers the question.
I think just to add on that, when you're thinking about AI deployment or building it, is starting from the foundation. Your knowledge base is your foundation. So if you don't have that data set ready for AI enablement, all that work is going to be for nothing, because there's going to be a ton of hallucinations and incorrect responses that are being provided either to agents and or to consumers, customers.
Yeah, and
I
then
think
anything that's ambiguous, you get to a human.
Mhm.
it raises a really important legal issue as well, and that you may be seeing the bots making misrepresentations, and courts are finding that you still have to honor the misrepresentation. So in your scenario, it's unclear to me if you meant like a bot talking to a supervisor bot, or if you meant a bot that's a customer bot talking to the bot. It just kind of raises this question in my head. Oh, well, I think that customer bot would still be considered a customer, so you'd have to honor it. There's other arguments you could make. But it's one of the other things that I think is a really important topic for contact centers, and hopefully one you're thinking about is really this idea of deep fakes and impersonation. There's a lot going on with that, and authentication, getting ahead of the fraud and using someone else's voice as at cloning the voice to call in, to get access to records and things like that. And this isn't really I guess it would be a question for the panel. What are you doing for those types of issues? Are you thinking about that? Sort of AI coming into the call center, not necessarily AI in the call center.
Rakeb, Bob, if you want to answer, I'd love to.
I think that's an ongoing challenge in any call center, to be honest with you. And I'm an advocate for, I've run fraud for a couple of different companies over the course of my career. And I'm an advocate for an investment in fraud just related to AI. And I know, our company is working on that. I can't say that we've got everything figured out yet, but I'm not the one leading that. But our company is certainly working on things with order to cash, and we've escalated things that we think are, and this is why human oversight is important, because a human can sometimes figure out that this doesn't look like another human interacting with me. So, and we have an escalation policy for that in place, and it's not foolproof by any stretch of the imagination. But like I said, if our business rules are robust and sound, I think that's the first line of defense.
Yeah, and I'll say too, from a CallMiner perspective, we have partners in place that we lean on and that we utilize when we are deploying our virtual agents and bots, right? So any that we have or that our customers are deploying, they're able to use those, again, deep fake, different companies that we have that are partners that are part of those compliances and guardrails around those. Specifically, it's for agents as well, but then also for the virtual agents and bots.
Yeah, I think it's something we're still learning on. We've changed some of our fraud training with the advent of generative AI. Just to, the fraud training just teaches an agent to pick off, this doesn't fit with a normal customer ordering criteria. And it kind of teaches you how to pick off things, billing address is different than shipping address. You've got to go in and check. So there's things like that even if that portion was automated, it would go to a live agent at that point. So there's triggers like that would automatically go for review. And in our case, even with a human agent, they go up to our escalation team. So there's triggers for that, but it's a challenge, because I think it's something that's continuing to evolve on how bad actors are trying to get through, the fraud nets in every company. So it's something that's going to have to continue to evolve, and probably evolve faster than it's evolved in the past.
We don't see a ton of AI coming into our contact centers, but we do see it on social, and that's a different challenge in itself.
We've had a few instances, I'll say, that we've caught, but we've seen it.
Do your bots, are they allowed to go off script, or do they have to stay on script? I'm just asking because one of the big things we see from the FTC, and they just keep saying it over and over again, is their law hasn't changed. Deception is deception. So if the bot just decides to say something. I mean, obviously emojis probably aren't going to get their attention, but if they were to say something else, how do you catch that and get in front of it?
Well, and this is part of the learning, right? The bot should be grounded in the knowledge base. And we've learned, along with Salesforce, since we were their first deployment, on how to do a better job of that. And it's really fundamentally blunt. And I think you just get better at that as you gain experience. And when you set up, it's called prompt building for a bot, which my team does, you have to change. You can't say that you support these languages. You have to say that you cannot communicate in anything but English and Spanish or whatever it is the languages that you support are. So we support eight languages today, and that's all it's allowed to communicate, even if it responds to a customer. So those are some of the things you learn that allow it not to go outside of the boundaries. It's not going to give an answer that's not in our knowledge base. So I think we've done that pretty well. I can't say it's foolproof because I can't claim to have a full understanding of the technology that goes behind generative AI. So we've got to continue to monitor it. And I think you got to be more diligent than you are with a human agent.
Do you think though, like we talked a lot when we were preparing about shadow AI, and like this isn't even a virtual agent, it could just be a human agent looking on their phone for an answer they can't find in the knowledge base? Is that something that you're confronting? I know a lot of companies are dealing with employees using AI on their own, even if they have policies saying not to do that. I'm just wondering, how do you handle that?
That's a good question.
We've had instances where our agents were using ChatGPT or something else on their own to search for answers, when we've explicitly said, like, unless it is approved by General Mills, you cannot use any AI solution, external one anyway. Sometimes you can tell when we're doing audits or case reviews, you can tell by the response. I'm like, this isn't in any of our response documentation or knowledge base. And so we can spot it out, and just agent coaching and making sure that their leadership is aware. So we're constantly looking at responses to make sure that is actually what we have in our, we are also a Salesforce org, so it's in our knowledge base, it's in our response library.
It's amazing. So common theme, right? I think that we always hear is always keeping a human in the loop. There's always still going to be checks and balances. Nobody is ready, nor do we believe don't even know if there will be a time when everything is really left to a virtual agent or a bot, right? And it's amazing how some people, lots of conversations about, oh yeah, AI is going to take over everything. There's going to be, everybody's going to lose their jobs and all these things. And then some that say, we're not even going to touch the AI because we're so unsure about it, and there's so much, risk. So keeping those humans in the loop, I think, and retraining, upskilling humans to be able to do jobs differently, alongside being able to be efficient with AI where it is in a trusted environment where it can be. Because I think we would all agree, just based on many of the conversations that we've had, that humans can do not so great things and go off the rails just as the same as, a virtual agent or a bot. And it's about what can we control in keeping it as safe and on the right path as possible.
Yeah, even in our mid-range plan, we're not, we may expand the usage, but we don't plan on expanding the deflection rates, because there's a couple of reasons, right? If a customer is genuinely upset, the human-to-human connection is valuable, and nobody can dismiss that, right? So that's real. So you need to understand that if you want to protect your brand image, and that's kind of what we're about. The other thing is the governance needs to be in place, and I think it's kind of where it is, and maybe I could be wrong, and the technology will be much better and it'll be different. But I always think there's going to be human governance. Now, somebody just mentioned the talent that you need to manage AI is different than the talent that exists in the organization today. And so we're doing a skills assessment on now what is needed to within customer service manage and I'll say it sounds very Terminator-esque, but a hybrid workforce, which is AI agents and human agents, right? Because that's essentially the way I think of it, because I have to manage them like they're workers in my organization. Otherwise, I'm not measuring the right things. But then I need generating knowledge for AI is different than generating knowledge for humans because they consume knowledge differently. And then QA and the monitoring systems are also different. So we need to hire people that understand the technology enough to manage that part of the business. And then you need people to build all the or configure. Our technology team designs a bot, right? And we have to configure it to support this product and this product and this product. So that becomes expertise that probably needs to reside closer to the source, which means that probably in the customer service organization.
Mm-hmm. Abe, we have any other questions out there?
So we have a comment from Jeff who stated, AI is still a baby, and babies should not be out on the street unsupervised. Well said.
I don't think any of us disagree with that.
Right? Yes.
I think I do. I'll throw out one more question, and I'd love for each one of you, Susan, Bob, and Rakeb, to give your opinion or response to it. So we were talking about really sort of closing all of this up. What is one principle or practice that every organization thinks should adopt now to build responsible and trustworthy AI experiences?
Question.
I'll go first. I always say that you should have an inventory, and you should be constantly updating your inventory. It's not one and done. You should know what you have and how it's being used and what's going in it. So I think if you can start building your inventory sooner rather than later, you'll get in front of a lot of the issues that are going to continue to pop up.
I think I mentioned this earlier. It's getting your foundation in a good place, making sure your knowledge is AI ready, your response libraries AI ready. Again, the knowledge that you're going to share with live agents, like Bob mentioned, is going to be different than AI. So it needs to have both components, and then have like making sure that you're building your the governance with transparency for consumers, because sometimes you don't know that you're actually interacting with an AI virtual agent or anything like that. So having that transparency to build that trust and keep that trust with your consumers. And it's not a one and done thing. Like once it's deployed, you just don't set it and forget it. It's a like Suzanne mentioned, it's a continuously, like you need to look at it, review it, reiterate as needed. So
Yeah, I totally agree with what you guys have said. It's baby steps, build it, test it, revise, and then even when you deploy, it's a constant monitoring. We've had to change prompts, and then if you switch to a new, if you go to ChatGPT, to Claude, or something else, you're probably going to have a different impact, and you have to adjust prompts again because each engine operates differently.
They really do. I'm one that sort of flips between several because we're able to, which is lovely. And it is amazing. And sometimes I'll do it just for that, just to be able to see. I want a really good comparison and see what this one's going to give me versus this one. And then really dig into like, okay, I'm going to change that prompt a little bit more to maybe hopefully understand why there was not maybe such, I haven't come anything where it was so vastly different that it was like, did you guys even really get the same prompt? How did I get that answer? But you know, there are definitely different nuances and elements, and I find it fascinating. Again, but being able to then take your human brain and formulate together like what is the best messaging for this message, right? Or what is the right next step with this, you know, particular prompt. It's pretty fascinating. It truly is.
It is.
I don't know.
And it
Can I have
requires a
one
bottle of
more?
Excedrin when you get there.
Yes, please. Yes, Susan.
I think people should be looking at their disclosures and consent capture to make sure that they're getting consent to receive AI calls, because the TCPA does not let you use artificial voice unless you have consent. So if you think you might want to do that in the future, now would be a good time to build it into your consents while you have them or while they're signing up, just to build for the future.
That's a brilliant point to make. Truly, yes. I know those are conversations we have a lot with our enterprise customers, or that our BPO friends have with their end customers. You know, those are things that they ended up putting into. Again, I know we've got several really great partners who that's really what they do. Their business is built on ensuring that there's the compliance piece with the AI bots and the virtual agents. So that's a great call out, Susan. Thanks.
We just received a question in the chat from Beth Ziff, and this is for anyone to answer, but what is the thinking on upfront bot message saying the conversation is being recorded like you do for phone calls? How have you modified the message?
So we actually tell the customer it's a virtual agent from the beginning. So we don't hide it at all. We're out front. We call our chatbot Wilson. So the technology team named it for Wiley and Son, our company. So they call it Wilson. It's Wilson introduces itself and says it's a virtual agent.
And then is he also saying, though, this call is being recorded for quality monitoring purposes or whatever it is?
Yeah, that's kind of standard in everything we do. Yeah. We do very little voice because we do a lot of B2B. So we don't have any AI at all on voice because we're not going to get the return on it. So right now it's email and chatbot.
I was just going to say, I help clients modify disclosures all the time. I just build off of the quality control. We're going to record the call and add things that make sense, or how they're using AI, that, you know, a third party tool is being used, something that's friendly. I know it's a balance because you don't want to scare off the customers, and so there's reluctance to say things. But I do think you can work it in. The other thing I will mention is that there's a lot of litigation around chatbots and not having the disclosure that comes up right away to say that a third party is maybe monitoring or have access to the information. So something else to make sure that you're looking at is it's not only just customer voice calls, it's also customer interactions in other channels where you may be using AI. And you probably all know this, but that's something I work on regularly.
So I have a question for Suzanne. Then with phone calls, I mean, we have the recording saying this call is recorded for quality and training purposes, but when you add on like the transcription portion, should that also be called out that the call could be transcribed or is being transcribed?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say a third-party tool is being used to assist and summarize this call. I mean, you can, obviously, I'm not doing a great job just saying it out loud, but you could work it all in to make it also for quality assurance or for other things that you're using it for. So I don't know if that helps.
Definitely. And great question, Beth. I don't know if there's anybody else that's on the call that's in our audience that maybe is doing something similar that you would maybe want to share how you all are tackling that. Okay.
I like the way that Bob is handling it up front, being transparent with the consumer. So if anyone else is doing anything differently or similar and you
Yeah.
want to share that experience, take yourself off mute and feel free to share it.
Hey, this is Jeff. I'll chime in.
Thank you, Jeff.
We serve a lot of different verticals, and it's really a mixed bag across our clients on whether they want to say I'm a digital agent or not. I'm working on one now for a big client, and it's really part of our geo routing where, we're just collecting their zip code so we can route them to their closest dealer.
Mhm.
I don't think something, in my opinion, and I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think that you need to disclose that it's an AI agent if there's going to be like two sentences. Now, if you're doing stuff, I assume like Bob, and I was a little late on the call, but where you have more interaction and, maybe you're talking about something that could be a 3-minute call versus a 1-minute call just to route them to their closest store. I think then it makes sense because, we're not trying to fool anybody, right? And I think there's a chance of the caller just being embarrassed, thinking 2 minutes of the call, hey, am I talking to a human? And even though they're getting what they want, I think if you disclose that up front, if you're having long conversations, my opinion is that's worthwhile.
So when I was in house, I always used to call myself Duarte Downer because I would come in with everyone would be so excited. There's cases out there that says that it could be wiretapping or eavesdropping if you even just have the capability, regardless of whether or not it's turned on. So conservatively, and then you have to make your own business decisions, obviously, I always advise to disclose it because those fines can rack up. It's 5,000 per instance at the California level and 10,000 at the federal level, even if you're just routing it. And I know it sounds outrageous, it's just where it is.
We typically will not, and in the 20 plus years I've been doing call assessments and call tracking, I've had one client who was a dental office that didn't want to have a disclaimer that calls may be recorded. But there's 15 states that are still two-party states. So, we as businesses can make that part of our onboarding packet, so all our employees are aware. That takes care of that. But for those 15 other states, the caller needs to know that as well. And I think to your point, Susan, that's a good one. Until somebody's called on the carpet for it, nobody's going to pay attention to it. And we find that's unfortunately, we say that more than one time in the automotive space.
Yeah, AutoNation just got called on it, but they got it dismissed.
We do have a question in the chat. Yeah. So from Kathleen, as consumers become more accustomed to interacting with AI, do you think their expectations of what constitutes a good customer experience are going to fundamentally change?
The answer is absolutely.
Yes. I was going to say yes. I think Bob got great, data to back that up to say yes. If the scorecards are getting better or the same.
We had a deterministic chatbot, AI chatbot, which is not generative AI, prior to 2023 when we deployed this one.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, everybody was playing with the new toy, ChatGPT. The customer satisfaction of our existing chatbot just went like this. So our sense of urgency to get that one deployed was high because the chatbot that we had, customers were not happy with anymore. So I think as the technology continues to improve, customer expectations are going to improve. On the flip side, in our chat, you can opt out at any time and go to a human agent. So it's right in the bottom of the screen. And we don't get a lot of customers anymore immediately opting out. So I think it's becoming more acceptable to have that technology in place. But the expectation on the implementation of that technology is higher than it used to be.
And as a consumer, you can tell when it's generative AI chatbot and when it isn't, because sometimes you just are in a constant loop, like asking the same thing, or or selecting the same options that they provide. So
Well, and the AI gets better every day, though. I'm telling you, it's getting harder and harder to discern. The other thing I think that's interesting is that, like when we have any, new clients that might be uncomfortable with this, we say, just let us replace your voicemail with an AI agent, right? And you're still going to get 40% of people that are just going to hang up because they hit voicemail. But for the ones that stay on, it can be a much more interactive experience. And, in our case, we want to be very friendly, but collect all the information that we need to technically make a lead out of it to send to the client. Why are people calling your business? The one and only reason, they have a question, maybe many questions, but they have a question. That's why they dialed. And it's the same thing. We still use a lot of IVRs, split down the middle. People love them, people hate them, but they're one of the best robocall preventers that's out there because bots typically can't press a key. And we always enable 0 as an option. Whether we tell people they can press it or not, it's a mix. But some people just need to talk to a human. But, if I want to make an appointment for an oil change, I don't need to know, much more than a human. And if I have the right interface that can just collect all that info, I can do that in 2 minutes instead of waiting on hold for 2 minutes for a service advisor to pick up.
Thanks for sharing, Jeff.
Yeah, just want to, hey, this is Bala. I know there was this earlier question on the disclosures at the beginning of the interaction. I just want to share a story on our side. What we have observed is when it comes to our chatbot, we say that you're talking to an AI and then things are recorded and other things. The customer segment that interacts with the digital assets generally are much more like they don't even look at it, I think. So sometimes they just keep going and interacting with it and do what they're doing there. But when we deploy the same kind of a disclosure on our voice side, there is a reluctance from a customer's perspective because you're greeted off saying that you're talking to an AI, you pay more attention to it. And that's where, as Jeff was pointing out, we were trying to explore an experiment of maybe some states makes us to say that you're talking to an AI. There are some states that doesn't mandate. Should we even experiment a few things and see how this lands on that? So I think I just want to land on this, like based on the mode of the communication, the reception of the customers is very, very different. When it comes to digital messaging and chatbot, there is an increased adoption. Like there is, I would say people are much more lenient and they don't mind about it. But when it comes to voice, it's yet to be solved, is what I would say. And I want to leave with one thing. One of the outbound experiments that we were doing was to make calls to potential customers of saying that, hey, you are with us with Verizon for so long, you're eligible for this offer, why don't you sign up for that? The TCPA rules that come in and say it almost takes the first 10 seconds where we have to say you're talking to an AI before the offer description be called out, and we saw many of the customers shutting down the phone because they don't play with it. So this is an evolving, things would change. I'm just saying this is some of the experiments that we have done and we have learned.
It's amazing. Thanks, Molly, for sharing. I think too, going back to Kathleen's question, right? Yes, it's definitely, we see the change already happening. Bob said it's changing fast, it's changing quickly. The acceptance of it is there. And, some of the research and things that we're seeing or the data that's proving out to us is, and then we all know this, we all who are of a certain age, and maybe have kids who are of a certain age, and their generations and what they want, as those generations are coming up, right? I think that's where we'll definitely see a much higher, really great customer experience number, because that is how they want, that is the type of interaction that they expect and that they want. We see a lot that they don't want to call in and wait and talk to somebody. Give me that quick, interaction and let's move on.
Wait,
So-
Shannon, you're saying that younger people are still going to talk on the phone? That's what they have thumbs.
No, exactly. Exactly.
You make a great point, Shannon. It's true.
Well, I think that are we at time? Are we over time?
We are, and we felt the hour wasn't going to be enough, but we didn't want to wait until the national conference in October to have this conversation. So we do plan to take a deeper dive into all these side topics of AI governance in Chicago. So we do want to make sure that we see everyone there. And if you haven't registered for the SOCAP National Conference, please make sure you go do so. And before Shannon goes to closing statements, I do want to share one final thing. If you haven't registered for the 26th annual SOCAP Yankee outing on August 26th, make sure you get your tickets now. There's still a few tickets available, and we look forward to seeing everyone there. So I'll hand it over to you, Shannon.
Dave, I think you closed us out very nicely. I would just say thanks to everybody for joining. Thank you for the participation in the chat. We were really excited to, again, be a part of this panel. Rakeb, Bob, Susan, I can't thank you all enough. It's been a pleasure working with you. Looking forward to much more. Hope everyone has a really fantastic rest of your week. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Everyone, bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.